Right. Let's bring in right now. This is a nice special addition to the show this morning. We've got CNN host and best-selling author Jake Tapper. You don't have to change your channel. Yes, that's Jake on Morning Joe. And he's out with his new novel titled The Devil May Dance. I love this book. It's a mix of The Manchurian Candidate and House of Cards with a little bit of Ocean's 11 thrown in. So it's a great book. I want to get to that in a second. I just want to ask you one quick question about what we've been talking about this morning, and that is the January 6th commission being voted against by most Republicans in the House, but also Mitch McConnell and Republicans in the Senate also seem to be ready to vote it down. Is this a good opportunity for Nancy Pelosi to just move forward aggressively with her own committee in the House?
It could be. What would be, I think, great is if she reached out to people like Republican Congressman Denver Riggleman, who is no longer in office but has an intelligence background. If she reached out to the Republicans out there, whether they are current office holders or former office holders, Congressman Rooney in Florida, and put them on the commission. These are Republicans who are conservative Republicans who also stand for getting to the bottom of the facts, who also do not engage in the big lie. If Pelosi were willing, and she's not a particularly bipartisan person, that is not her inclination. That's not how she got to the position of power she's in. But if she were willing to work with the Liz Cheneys of the world and the Adam Kinzingers and the Peter Myers of the world and say, who would you like to be on this commission? Because I need to be able to work with Republicans, current Republicans in the House who stand against the lie, who stand for getting to the bottom of what happened. Tell me who you think should be on this commission. If she were willing to work that way, then I think the commission would have some credibility, because then at least it would have individuals who are current Republican office holders on the right side of history, as it were, saying, I support this commission. But if she just lets McCarthy name the people, he's going to put Marjorie Taylor Greene on the commission. I mean, who knows what he's going to do. He obviously does not want to get to the bottom of what happened.
Right. And since he's shown his hand that he doesn't want the truth to be out there, it seems to make sense that Nancy Pelosi can come forward with a bipartisan commission that she can help set up with the help of, like you said, some conservative Republicans who actually are on the right side of history when it comes to January the 6th. All right, Jake, so tell me, when did you get this idea to write this novel based on, I think, one of the more exciting times in Washington history over the past half century?
Well, I just learned I guess when I was doing promotion for my first novel, The Hellfire Club, I learned this incredible story that maybe you already knew. I don't know. But I learned that. So obviously Sinatra and the Rat Pack worked their hearts out for Kennedy in 1960 to elect President John F. Kennedy. And then in that aftermath, Sinatra had his Rancho Mirage estate, his compound, built up. Rooms added, phone lines added. He had a helipad built in expectation that President Kennedy would stay with him when he came out to California. And Sinatra was getting ready for that visit in 1962. But Attorney General Robert Kennedy, who I know is one of your heroes, Joe, Attorney General Robert Kennedy, who was going after organized crime, was faced with this conundrum because some of the people he was investigating had stayed at Sinatra's compound. So he had to decide, do I insult one of the biggest stars in the world who helped my brother get elected, or do I let my brother sleep literally in a compound where mobsters had slept? So that's the true story. And what I just did was have my characters from the Hellfire Club, Charlie and Margaret, go out to investigate to see if Sinatra was really mobbed up. And while they're there, they go on the set of The Manchurian Candidate. They meet L. Ron Hubbard and all sorts of other things.
That sounds like a lot of fun. And Willie, of course, it was Bobby Kennedy blocking his brother from going to Sinatra's estate out in California that turned old Blue Eyes into a lifelong Republican after that.
I was going to say it broke his heart and changed his politics in a lot of ways. Jake, it's great to see you, my friend. We love these crossover events when we get to steal you for a little bit. So keep writing these books. I have a process question first. You and I lead similar lives. We have children exactly the same ages. We love our families. We like to be with them. We have weekday shows and Sunday shows. So when on earth did you write a novel?
So I just have this rule where when I'm in the middle of a writing project, I just need to write a minimum of 15 minutes every day. That's the commitment I make. 15 minutes a day. Because anybody can find 15 minutes a day, after the kids go off to school, over lunch, right before you go to bed. And if that's all you do, 15 minutes a day, by the end of the week, you got an hour, 45 minutes under your belt. That's maybe 3 or 4 pages. It's something. And usually it ends up being more than 15 minutes. But that's the commitment. It's like the commitment to to do cardio 5 days a week or whatever. You just have to say, this is what I'm doing. And, as they say, writers write. So that's the difference between me and aspiring novelists out there who haven't written novels, is that I just made that commitment to do 15 minutes a day.
And you've taken away all of our excuses. So thanks a lot. I guess we have to do this now. So, Jake, talk a little bit about Sinatra. And we referenced it that, his heart, frankly, was broken, that Kennedy didn't come out there. And it sort of changed his view of politics and changed his life.
What's really remarkable about it is how much Sinatra really was, and he's obviously a complicated guy with a lot of flaws and potentially, bipolar disorder. But beyond that, he really was a very crusading progressive on the issue of civil rights. This is something that I learned while writing this book. In the 40s and 50s and 60s, he was way out there, way ahead of the Kennedys when it came to fighting for civil rights, making sure that African-American black members of his band and Sammy Davis Jr. were paid the same. He tried to integrate hotels and clubs in Las Vegas. So he really was way ahead on the progressive cause. But as you note, the Kennedys broke his heart, and that's kind of part of what I write about in this book. The Kennedys broke his heart, and in the same way that Ava Gardner did. And ultimately, as you note, Willie, you and I grew up knowing the Ronald Reagan Frank Sinatra. Right. That was the first image I have Frank Sinatra, is him serenading Ronald and Nancy Reagan, quite different from the early 60s. And I really do think, as you and Joe note, this heartbreak of an event pushed him in that direction.
Jake, Mike Barnacle's here with a question for you. Mike?
Hey, Mike.
Jake, in listening to you and Willie, in listening to you and Willie just now, and you explaining to Willie about how you go about writing your novel, I really like you. I've liked you for a long time, but I hate you now because you have destroyed my family. My wife is trying to get in here and choke me to death when you say, you write 15 minutes a day.
You're pretty prolific.
Of course, we know you. But
you're pretty prolific.
The story, Mike. The nut. Well, at what? the kernel of the story that you're talking about, your latest novel, that period of time in Los Angeles is so rich in detail. The Kennedys, Peter Lawford, Marilyn Monroe, everything is all there. The Los Angeles mob, Bugsy Siegel. So as you got immersed in it in order to write this novel, how many other thoughts came into your mind that you had to exclude from the principal point of the narrative that you have in the novel that exists right now?
A lot, and as you know, as a writer, one of the saying, I think it was Faulkner that said, "Killing your darlings is the process of editing." All these things that you love, but you have to remove from the book for the sake of the narrative. And there was a lot. I found out that I didn't know before that Eisenhower actually had an estate in Palm Springs right around that time. And I wrote an entire chapter where Charlie and Margaret, my heroes, go and visit the Eisenhowers in Palm Springs just because I thought it was so cool. And Charlie is an Eisenhower Republican. And then ultimately, I had to kill the whole chapter because it really didn't add anything to the plot at all. There was one line that advanced the plot, and I just stuck that on a previous chapter. So there was a lot that I left on the floor. Bugsy Siegel was dead at that point, but there were a whole bunch of other great mobsters that were in prison at the time, so I couldn't include them in the book either. And that was actually kind of a relief. I had an excuse to not write that. But you're right, the period is so rich. There's so much going on in the early 60s. So many of the stars of that era remain touchstones today, cultural touchstones, whether it's Tippi Hedren or Alfred Hitchcock, Paul Newman, and the others. And so I have a scene that takes place at a famous club at the time called the Daisy, where I allude to and I mention a number of these people, but I can't go into their stories because, you know, I had to focus on the plot. But, you know, there's like a throwaway line where Robert Mitchum and Gregory Peck, who are filming in Northern California, they're filming Cape Fear. Little vignettes like that, but I had to focus on the plot. But you're right, it's so rich. There's so much going on at the time.
That sounds so exciting. And Jake, you may not know the backstory, but Mike Barnichel's been writing a book actually for decades now. Been telling his wife he's almost done, and he's used the excuse of interviewing everybody from George H.W. Bush, went to Kennebunkport, said, Mr. President, I'm writing a book. Okay, I'll talk to you, Mike. All the way back to Pee Wee Reese, I think. In this book, he cannot finish this book. So his wife's bothering him, and now I guarantee you that 15-minute rule will be put in place in that household, and your 45-minute-a-day cardio rule will be put in place in my household. Jake, thanks a lot, buddy. Thanks a lot.